Sunshines! Welcome back to my channel. I'm Monica and this is Sunshine Collective. So in this week's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make your very own crochet mushroom keychain. These are perfect for market preps. Works up in about an hour. Super easy make, beginner friendly. All you need to know is magic ring, that's the hardest part. Magic ring, working in the round, increasing and decreasing, and single crochets. And there's some sewing involved, but I will show you as we go through exactly how to sew it. I will show you where to sew on, where to put your needle into. You have everything you need in this video to make your very own crochet mushroom keychain. So let's get on into the tutorial. For materials for this pattern, you're going to need 2 colors of yarn, ideally something that's a cream or a white color for the base of the mushroom, and then a contrasting color for the top. So I just have these 2. I don't even know what brand they are. They're just a cotton yarn. Any type of worsted weight 4 yarn will work for this pattern. You're also going to need a pretty small crochet hook. The one I'm using is 2.75 millimeters. If you're planning on doing a keychain with this mushroom, you're going to need a small jump ring, a split key ring, and potentially a lobster clasp. If you are doing the keychain, you're going to want a couple pairs of needle nose pliers to move the jump ring and to add it onto your mushroom. So these are a good option. And then of course, some trusty yarn scissors and a darning needle. You're also going to need 1 stitch marker to keep track of the beginning of each round because this piece is worked in 1 continuous round. You're also going to need a small amount of stuffing or scrap yarn to stuff your mushroom with. To start out our mushroom pattern, we need to do a magic ring. And I know this can be intimidating, but it's honestly not too bad. The biggest part that's confusing is where your tail and working yarn goes and the order that you do things in. So you have your tail end off to the right, your working yarn off to the left. Your working yarn is what is connected to the rest of your yarn. You are going to grab this tail end. First, you're going to drape it over your index and your middle like this, and you're going to pinch it with your thumb and your index. So you're just holding it like that, tail end hanging off to the side. We're not doing anything with the tail. Now you have the working yarn in your right hand. So you have the working yarn in your right hand. You are going to wrap it around your middle and index finger like that. And then you're going to come back around over the top. And it's going to create this X. And once you're over the top, go ahead and take your ring finger and pinch that yarn between your ring finger and your middle finger. So you should have an X just like this. Then you're going to go ahead and grab your hook. And actually, I will say right here, the way that it should be is the slant of the X that's going from bottom left to top right should be on the bottom, and the one that's going from top left to bottom right should be on the top. So just take a look at this video. This is what it should look like on your fingers. So you're going to go ahead and take your hook, and you're going to go underneath this very top right part like that. And you're going to go over the top left, grab it with your hook, and pull it underneath that top right. And then you're going to turn your hook like so. So you should have a loop on your hook like that. You have your loop on your hook like so, and then you're just going to chain 1 with that same top left part to lock it in place like that. Then you can take your fingers out, and there's your magic loop. Then you can, this tail end you will pull, and it can tighten down that loop. So there's the magic ring. And let's go ahead and start with the pattern. Once you've made your magic ring, we are going to place 6 single crochet into the magic ring. Now I prefer to do yarn under single crochets for this because it gives a more crisp and clean look to amigurumi pieces. So I just insert my hook into the magic ring like so. And then instead of doing yarn over like that, I will put the hook over and put the yarn under the hook and pull it through like that. If you have a hard time remembering where your first stitch was, it's always a good idea to place stitch markers. So I am just going to place a stitch marker in that first stitch that I just created. I just placed my stitch marker, and now I'm going to go on with placing the rest of the 5 single crochets, or 5 more single crochets into this magic loop. So there's a total of 6 single crochets into the magic ring now. going to go ahead and go on to round 2. Now this is amigurumi that's worked in one continuous round, so there's no joining and there's no slip stitches, chaining, anything like that. We're just going to move straight into round 2. So round 2 is to do 6 increases or 2 single crochets in each stitch. So I'm going to pull my stitch marker out. I'm going to place my first single crochet, and I like to do this before I tighten that magic ring all the way down because it's just easier to get that single crochet in there. So I place my first single crochet of round 2, and then I'm going to immediately go in and place the stitch marker to mark that. This yarn likes to split, so it's kind of hard to put stitch marker in. So I just put my stitch marker after that first stitch. I'm going to go ahead and pull on my tail end to tighten that magic ring down. And then I need to place another single crochet in that same stitch because we're doing 2 single crochets in each stitch all the way around. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to finish this off camera. We just finished row 2 or round 2 with 2 single crochets in each stitch. So you should end this round with 12 single crochets total. Again, my little stitch marker is marking the first stitch, and then you can just go around from there and count to make sure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And then we're going to go ahead and move on to round 3. And for round 3, we are just doing, there's no increases, but we will be working in the back loop only. So we're going to take our stitch marker out, set her off to the side, and we're going to do 12 single crochets back loop only. So if you look up here at the top, you see this V. This is the front loop, and then this is the back loop if you're looking at the V. So we are going to insert our hooks just in the back loop and then work our single crochet into that. And we are going to do 1 single crochet in the back loop only all the way around. So place your first one, place your stitch marker, and then go all the way around, and I will meet you back up at the start. All right, I just finished round 3 with 12 single crochets in the back loop only, and this is what it's looking like. At this point, usually I will grab this tail end and pull that center part more tight. This is also the time I actually like to weave in this tail, just because as we work upwards, you're not going to be able to weave it in later. So if you want to weave it in and secure it, now is the time to do so. I just finished weaving in that end, and now we're ready for round 4 and round 5. Round 4 and round 5 are really simple. It's just single crochet all the way around for both rounds. So you should end round 4 with 12 single crochets, and you should end round 5 with 12 single crochets. And again, make sure to use your stitch marker to help you keep track of where that first stitch is. So I'm going to go ahead and do round 4 and 5 off camera, and I will meet you back up for round 6. I just finished round 4 and 5, and this is what it's looking like now. Sorry, that's my little tail end piece. This is what it should be looking like now, just a little, you can see it's starting to work up vertically. And we are ready for round 6. Now round 6, we start with an invisible decrease. So to do that, we're going to take out our stitch marker from the previous row, and all you're going to do for an invisible decrease is you're going to insert your hook into the front loop of the next stitch and the front loop of the stitch after that. And then you're going to work a single crochet across both of those stitches. And that is an invisible decrease. So you're going to do an invisible decrease for the first stitch. So it's combining 2 stitches into 1. And then we're going to place 4 single crochets around. So I'm going to do that, and then I will show you the invisible decrease one more time. So there's 1 single crochet, 2, 3. I'm going to show you the invisible decrease again. So you're just going to insert your hook into the front loop of the next stitch that you would be working into. Don't yarn over anything, but go straight into the front loop of the following stitch. So then you should have 3 loops total, but you should have these 2 loops that you're going to be working into to create your single crochet. So then you're just going to do a single crochet as normal with those 2 loops on your hook. Then we're going to do another 4 single crochets, and we'll be back at the beginning. 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, and so what we did there was we placed 2 decreases. So this should decrease your stitch count from 12 to 10. So we'll just count to make sure that happened. So we have our first one with our stitch marker in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Perfect. So now we are ready for round 7 and 8. And round 7 and 8 are going to be very similar to 4 and 5. You're just doing 2 rounds of single crochet. But this time there should be 10 single crochets in each round instead of 12. So round 7 and 8, 10 single crochets in each round. So go ahead and do those 2 rounds, and I will meet you back up at the end of row 8. We just finished rows 7 and 8, so you should have just finished 2 rounds of single crochets. And we are at the beginning of round 9. So for round 9, we're going to be decreasing again. But one thing I like to do before I start decreasing again is I like to start to stuff my mushroom, because this is a harder piece of amigurumi to stuff. So I try to stuff it little by little. So we're gonna go ahead and start stuffing. And I'm just using polyfill because I have a lot of it, but if you keep your little tails and scrap yarn, you can absolutely use that to stuff this instead. These can be a little bit tricky to stuff. So right now, because the hole is still big enough to stuff it, I can just use my fingers, but as it gets smaller, I will show you how I do that. So I'm just gonna stuff this off camera, and then I will be right back. Just finished my first round of stuffing. You do want to stuff this pretty firmly, but we are getting ready to start round 9, and we will be decreasing again for this. So for our first stitch, we're going to be doing an invisible decrease. Keep in mind, if you use cotton yarn, this is why I kind of dislike using cotton yarn at times, because it splits easier. And it's a little tedious to work with, especially in smaller pieces like this. This is just what I had scrap of laying around, and I didn't want to go buy new yarn for this project. But we're going to do our first invisible decrease, and then place our stitch marker in that first stitch. And then we're going to place 3 single crochets. And the way I find it easiest to do this is to use my finger to hold the stuffing down, so I'm not accidentally picking up stuffing. So I put my finger in there. Having nails kind of helps in this situation. Not always with crochet. 2 and 3 single crochets. And now we're going to do another invisible decrease. So again, going into that front loop of the next 2 stitches, yarning under, and see, maybe this is where it gets tricky. There we go, finishing out that single crochet. Then you should have 3 stitches left in this round. So we're going to do 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So that's the end of row 10. And at the end of this row, you should have 8 stitches. Stuff again if you'd like. Sometimes I will wait until the end of row. I'm so sorry. This is row 9. I think I was saying row 10. This is the end of row 9. So we did our invisible decreases, 3 single crochets, an invisible decrease, and another 3 single crochets, and at the end you should have 8 stitches. So we'll go ahead and count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then round 10 is just a single crochet in each stitches. So 8 single crochets total. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that off camera, and I will meet you back up once I'm finished with round 10, which again, just 1 single crochet in each stitch. Just finished round 10 with a total of 8 single crochets. It was just single crochets straight around. And we're going to go ahead and stuff again at this point. And as you can see, this hole is very small. So it's kind of hard to work this stuffing into. So I usually have to fight it a couple different ways. One way is I will use my needle nose pliers to force the stuffing in that way. Another is you can try to use the end of your crochet hook and then your finger to hold it in place. But you do have to just finagle it until you can get it in there how you want. And we will be decreasing one more time. So I like to stuff this extra firmly because sometimes after that last decrease, I can't stuff it anymore. So I will like stuff this extra and then work it out more evenly, I guess. This is the end of round 10. This is where we are. This is what it should look like. You can see where our row of back loop only went in. This is the end. And we're going to move on to row 11 now. So for row 11, for round 11, we are going to be doing more decreases. So to start this, we're going to do an invisible decrease, Insert your hook into the front loops of the next 2 stitches and finish out a single crochet. Then we're going to place 2 single crochets. Actually, sorry, stitch marker. Place your stitch marker. And this stitch marker honestly is more and more helpful when there's less stitches because it gets kind of confusing when it's all bunched up together. So this helps a lot with showing where you started. So we do 1 decrease and then 2 single crochets. 1. And be careful to make sure you only have the 2 loops of the stitch you're working into on your hook. It's very easy to accidentally cut across and grab a stitch from the other side. Luckily, this is the hardest part of the mushroom, is this most narrow spot. Everything else is pretty easy. So we're going to do another decrease, your next invisible decrease, and then 2 more single crochets. And 2. And again, you can see I'm kind of struggling to work into these stitches. So you should end round 11 with 6 single crochets. Round 12, you're just going to single crochet around for 6 total stitches. So I'm going to do round 12 off camera. Again, go ahead and do 1 round of single crochets. All right, just finished round 12 and we have the bottom part of our stalk completed. So as you can see, this was really tight at this point. You can try to add more stuffing if you want and if you're able to. Otherwise, you can just keep going. Sometimes I can't. I don't fight it for too long. I'm going to try to put a little more stuffing in here, I think, and I will meet you back once I do that. I actually wanted to show you how I put stuffing in when it's this small. I use these needle nose pliers and then I just use a little tiny bit of stuffing at a time. Insert them and just start pushing in like that. Surprisingly, it worked this time. I might be able to add a little bit more. I stuffed this very firmly. Obviously, you want to stuff it so that your stuffing's not showing through your stitches, but this is like a keychain and I like it to have more of a firm, stiff appearance. So I'm just going to get more of the stuffing in, mold it as you go. Sometimes I do one of these. Feel it when it's your desired firmness. We're ready to move on. So we're moving on to round 13. And luckily, we are done decreasing. We're going to move back into increasing now. So round 13, you will be placing 2 single crochets in each stitch around, so you should end round 13 with 12 stitches. So again, an increase is just placing 2 single crochets into 1 stitch. That was the end of round 13, so we should have 12 single crochets now. We increased all the way around, and that's what it's looking like. So round 14, 15, 16, and 17 are the rest of our mushroom stalk, and all of this will be worked back loop only, and we're going to be increasing in each round. So we'll start with round 14. We're going to be doing back loop only, and we're going to do 1 single crochet, 1 increase all the way around. So I will show you that to get started. And again, back loop only from here on out for the rest of this stalk. So back loop only, we're going to place 1 single crochet. I just placed my stitch marker, and then our next stitch we're going to do an increase. And I guess I'll show you again. If you're looking at the V here on the top of your stitch, that's the front loop. This is the back loop. So we're going to skip over the front loop, work right into the back loop. We're going to place an increase here. So 2 single crochets into that same stitch. 1, and we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around, doing 1 single crochet and then 1 increase all the way around. And you should end round 14 with 18 stitches. 1 single crochet. All right, we just finished round 14 for a total of 18 stitches, and these were all back loop only. And you can see this little line starting to form. We will have that'll go spiral around. You'll see it as we go, as we add more rounds. But that was the end of round 14. Round 15, we'll go ahead and start that. It's 2 single crochets, 1 increase. Again, back loop only. So we're going to place 1 single crochet, place our stitch marker. We're going to place another single crochet, and then we'll do our increase. 1 and 2. And then you're just going to follow that all the way around. You're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase. And follow that pattern all the way around. You should end this round with 24 stitches. We just finished round 15. You should have ended with 24 stitches. And you can see if we look from the underneath, you can see these little gills starting to form, and that's what they're actually called on real mushrooms, are gills. So that's what we're building right now. That's why we were working in back loop only, is to create these little gills. So let's move on to round 16. So round 16, we're going to be following the same type of increase pattern, but we're going to be placing 3 single crochet and then an increase. There's 1 in the back loop only. There's 2, 3, and then our increase. So you'll just follow that pattern all the way around, and you should end this round with 30 single crochets. So do 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase for a total of 30 stitches. So we just finished round 17, and that was the last round of the gills of our mushroom, and we're ready to fasten off. For me, I like to do an invisible fasten off because I feel like it makes it look more seamless. It's also important to have that seamless look because we will be sewing on the mushroom cap to this. So I'm going to show you how to do an invisible finish. You're going to go ahead and just leave your hook in that last stitch. Don't do anything with it. You're going to grab your scissors and you're going to cut off about 6 inches of a tail. So cut that off, then you're going to go ahead and use your hook and pull that tail all the way through. So basically the point of an invisible finish is to make this round look more seamless. As you can see now, if I finished this off traditionally, there would be a little step or jump here, and we want to avoid that. So we're basically going to create a faux stitch to make it look more seamless. Then you're going to go ahead and grab your needle and thread it. To insert your needle not in this next V, but the one after it, from front to back. So you're going to insert it like that. We're going to go ahead and pull through gently, adjust as you go. And then we're going to insert our needle where your yarn came out of, so back into this stitch, and we're going to insert it front to back through that back loop. And essentially this is just going to create another little V to make this more seamless. Then you can just pull it tight, and there's our invisible finish. You want to pull it tight. You want to pull it not too tight, but tight enough that this little fake V blends in with the other ones. So edge a little smoother. And this will even out more as we add the top of our mushroom. So let's move on to the next part. We are ready to move on to the top of our mushroom. So we are going to start it off the exact same way we did the bottom of the mushroom. So we're going to do a magic ring first. So we're going to start off with a magic ring, just like we did with the first. So you make the little X, and you go under this part here, over the top, scoop it under, so you have a loop on your hook, and chain 1. Then we're going to work 6 single crochets into that magic ring. I like to fix this tail so that it's not twisting around. We're going to go ahead and place 6 single crochets into our magic ring. 1, and again, I'm working over the tail. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 single crochets. So then you can go ahead and pull this tight, but not too tight, because you want to be able to work into that first single crochet. Speaking of that first single crochet, I should have put my stitch marker in, and I did not, but it's right here. And the difference with, I'm not even gonna bother with it. The difference between this and the bottom is that this one is just going to be all increases. So round 1 was just 6 single crochets into the magic ring. All right, moving on to round 2. Round 2 is just going to be an increase in each stitch around. So 2 single crochets in each stitch. And you should end round 2 with 12 single crochets. Here's our first stitch right here. And sometimes if you pull that magic ring closed too tightly, it's hard to work into this first stitch. 2 single crochet in each stitch all the way around. And I will meet back up with you at the end of round 2. All right, we just finished round 2 of the top of the mushroom, and we're ready to start round 3. Round 3, we're going to place 1 single crochet and then 1 increase all the way around. So 1 single crochet, 1 increase all the way around, and you should end round 3 with 18 single crochets. So I'm going to do that off camera, and then I will meet back up with you at the end of this round. All right, we just finished round 3 of the top of our mushroom, and you should have 18 stitches at the end of this round. and we're ready to start round 4. So round 4, we're going to place 2 single crochets followed by an increase. So we'll place 1, 2 single crochets and then an increase. And you'll repeat that all the way around, and at the end of the round you should have 24 stitches. So I am going to go ahead and do this off camera, and I will meet back up with you at the end of the round. So we just finished round 4, I believe, round 4. And you should have a total of 24 stitches now. So moving on to round 5, we are not going to be doing any increases for this round. It's just going to be single crochets all the way around. So you should be starting this round with 24 stitches and ending this round with 24 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do this round off camera, and I will meet back up with you at the end. All right, that was the end of round 5, and you should still have 24 stitches at the end of this round. All right, we're ready to move on to round 6, and for this round you will be doing 3 single crochets followed by an increase. Looks like I crocheted some of my hair into this. So you'll be doing 3 single crochets followed by an increase for round 6. So there's our first single crochet. Insert stitch marker, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3 single crochets, and an increase. And you'll just repeat that pattern all the way around, and you should end this round with 30 stitches. All right, we just finished round 6 of the top of our mushroom, and we're going to do we're ready to start round 7 and the last round of our mushroom. So for this last round, you are just going to single crochet around. No increases or anything, just 1 round of straight single crochets. And you should be starting and finishing this round with 30 single crochets. And it's pretty important that you make sure that you end on 30 single crochets with this mushroom top, because we ended on 30 single crochets with the bottom part, and we are going to be sewing them together, so we need to make sure that the stitch number matches up. So I'm just going to continue single crocheting around, and then I will meet back up with you on the other side to fasten off. All right, so we just finished our last round of the top of the mushroom, and we're going to go ahead and fasten off. And we are going to do it the exact same way that we did with the bottom. We are going to do an invisible finish. The difference with this one is you want to leave a pretty long tail, because we're going to use it to sew this top of the mushroom onto the bottom. So a general rule of thumb is that you will do 3 times the circumference of your piece. I don't measure that. Usually I just eyeball it. Usually, I don't know, this is probably about 18 inches. I would rather have too much than too less, or I would rather have too much than too little. It's very important that you have enough, because you can't add more yarn on for this step. So just make sure you cut off enough. You might end up with some scrap yarn, but that's fine. So we're just going to do an invisible finish, just like on the bottom. So you cut off, pull your tail all the way through, pull that nice and tight. Going to thread our needle. I'm going to thread our needle, and then we're going to insert our needle, not in this next stitch with the stitch marker, but the one after that. And we're going to insert it under that V, front to back. And I'm going to go ahead and take the stitch marker out. I'll pull through. Got a lot of pulling through because there's a lot of yarn here. Make sure it's setting how you want it. And then you're going to go back over to the stitch that you came out of. So you're going to skip this stitch and then go into this one. So this is the one that we started at. And you're going to insert your needle front to back in the back loop only. Insert it like that. Then you're just going to pull through, and you're going to gently tighten it until this new fake stitch we made is about the same size as your other stitches. So like that is an invisible finish, and we're going to move on to the next step of making our mushroom keychain, ornament, fidget, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to add our little seeds on next. For the seeds for the top of the mushroom, or the little spots, you can use yarn using the same color you used for the bottom of your mushroom, or optionally you can use seed beads to create the spots. And these are just check seed beads in size 6, I guess? I don't know how seed beads work, but they're this size. And you'll want some white embroidery floss or thread to sew those beads on. If you are creating a Christmas ornament to hang on your tree, optionally you can use hemp or some sort of twine to create the little loop to hang on your tree. This would be really cute. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to put the spots on the top of your mushroom. The first way, and probably the easiest way to do it, is just using the yarn you used for the bottom of your mushroom. So you'll just cut off a pretty long length of yarn, and then just coming in from the back, you're just going to go in between a couple of the stitches like that, pull out back to front, pull it almost all the way through. I leave a little bit and then I'll tie a knot there later just to secure it. Hold my finger there, and then you're going to go up, straight up in between the next row of stitches and pull through. And that's what it looks like. Optionally, if you don't like that, if you want them to be thicker, you can go through twice to create a little bit of a thicker spot like that. I personally like how it looks thicker. So usually when I use yarn, I will go through each stitch twice. And then you just go around randomly. I place them intermittently, starting around the very bottom, and then I'll work in rounds like going up to the top. But that is how you add the yarn spots, and I'm going to show you how to do the seeds. For the bead option, you're probably going to need a smaller needle than the darning needle you're using. So first, just make sure your needle fits through your beads. Now we are going to thread our needle with this embroidery floss, and I'm going to cut off probably way more than I need. So for the bead option, you're going to thread your string through very similar to how you would do the yarn. So we're going to come up from back to front, wherever we want to place our first bead, pull almost all the way through, and then I usually like to tie a couple knots at the end to keep this from pulling through. I secured it at the back, and now we're going to thread our first bead on. So we're just going to put that on our needle and pull it all the way down until it's up against the mushroom. And then you're going to take your yarn and put it back out the same stitch you came in through. So right back out that same stitch from front to back. And just pull nice and tight. Get it, make sure it's adjusted how you like it. And that is how you add your seed beads. So then when you go to add another one, you'll just skip over a few stitches, insert needle back to front. One piece of advice is to make sure you're not accidentally catching this outside yarn when you're going from back to front, because then you sometimes have to undo some of your seeds to fix it, because that yarn, you need that tail to attach it to the stalk of the mushroom. Out the same old stitch, pull it nice and tight. So I'm gonna go ahead, and I'm doing beads for this mushroom, so I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of these beads, and I will meet back up with you once I do that. All right, I just finished sewing on the seed beads onto the top of my mushroom, and this is what it looks like. Honestly, I'd probably prefer a little bit of a smaller size bead, but this is what I had on hand. It's very nice sensory wise to play with, but that's how you get your little spots on. This is what the inside looks like, a little bit chaotic. I kind of got some stuff sideways, but I'm going to go ahead and tie my thread off up inside of here to make sure that it doesn't come undone and we lose our seeds. So the way that I do that, I'm just going to flip it inside out, so, and I'm just going to weave the thread in through a few stitches of my mushroom. This is a little trickier to do, but just weave it in back and forth. Something else you can do is add a drop of fabric glue on if you're concerned. Hang on. You can add a drop of fabric glue if you're concerned about it coming out. And then I'll go back, loop through like this, just through that first thread, and I will tie a knot. So I will pull through and then insert my needle through this loop and just tighten that down, and do that a couple times. And be careful that you're not coming out through the front while you're doing this or warping any of your stitches. So pull that nice and tight. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off, and I am gonna leave a little bit of a tail because it stresses me out to cut it too short. And then the other thing I like to do, because it doesn't really matter what this side looks like because it's going to be sewed together anyways and you're not going to see it, but I like to go ahead and tie this centerpiece of the top of my mushroom with this thread. It just gives me more peace of mind that nothing's coming undone. And again, I tie it pretty tight, but I don't tie so tight that it's warping any of the stitches. And that is the top of the mushroom. And now we are going to move on to attaching this to the bottom of the mushroom. Actually, I forgot to mention, before you attach this to the bottom of the mushroom, you're going to want to choose what your plan is for your mushroom. So if you're going to do a keychain, we are going to add the key ring to our mushroom now. It's just a lot easier to do it this way than to try to do it once it's finished. So I'll show you how to add key ring. So first you're going to need a little jump ring like this. The exact size and measurement doesn't matter. You don't want the metal to be too thin of a gauge though, because it can bend and break off easier. But I just used this little size. This is what I had on hand. It was not in the original packaging, so I have no idea what the measurement was on it. But you're going to want to take your 2 sets of pliers. You can do this by hand. It's a lot harder and a lot easier to get frustrated. So I just used 2 sets of needle nose pliers. You're going to grab one on each side, so, and you're going to turn them in opposite directions from one another so that your jump ring opens like that. And this just prevents the circle from warping once you go to tighten it back down. And now we're going to add this jump ring to the top of our mushroom. So I like to hold it with the pliers still. It's just easier for me to maneuver. And then you're going to try to find the very center at the top, but you're going to find a good stitch to insert it in. So I'm going to go right here. I think that looks like a good spot. But you're just going to have to insert your jump ring and try to get it through a full stitch or a full piece of a full thread. You don't want to split your yarn. You just want it to be as secure as possible. So I'm going to go off camera and do this because this is kind of hard to do on camera, and I will meet you back after I get this on there. All right, after some maneuvering, we got it in. Sometimes it takes a little bit, but we got it in. And now we're just going to stick on our split ring and our lobster clasp. And then we're going to tighten this key ring back down, or this jump ring back down. Actually, I am kind of worried that this might be too small of a jump ring for both of these, but we're gonna try it. Rotate it back in place, and then you want to make sure it's nice and secure. So this is what it looks like with the little key ring on. Got it off to the side, but that's okay. Gives it some whimsy. But I think today I'm going to make mine into a Christmas ornament, so I'm going to take this key ring off and show you how to do the Christmas ornament version. To make this into a Christmas ornament, you're going to need a little bit of twine or hemp, or you can just use yarn. I personally like how this hemp twine looks. You are going to cut off, you're going to cut off 6 to 12 inches of your hemp, and you're going to come out through the very top of the mushroom where you started your magic ring. And you're probably not going to be able to get out through the very top hole. In the back, near the center, from back to front, pull all the way through about that much so that we can tie the ends together. And then you're going to go back down through either the same stitch, or if you're not exactly in the center, kind of off by a couple stitches. And you're going to pull all the way down until you have as much length as you want to make an ornament. So, I don't know, is that about ornament length? That looks about ornament length. Then I'm just going to flip her inside out, tie these two in a secure knot, and trim it off, and we will have the top of our ornament. Now we're going to sew the top of our mushroom onto the bottom. So to do that, we're going to first thread this long tail onto our needle. Then we're going to take the bottom of our mushroom, and it doesn't matter which stitch you start in. You're going to, though, go through, just insert your hook from back to front through the back loop of one of those stitches. So pull our mushroom top into place, and then we are basically going to be whip stitching all the way around. So we're not going to go back up through the bottom. We're going to come back around to the top, and we're going to go through both legs of the stitch on the top. So you're going to go from top to bottom or back to front, depending on where you're looking, of the next stitch on the top of your mushroom, and then through the back loop only on the bottom. You're going to pull through like that. Pull it pretty tight, not super duper tight. And then you're going to come back around to the top and go through top to bottom, back to front, the entire stitch on the top mushroom, and then back to front, the back loop on the bottom of the mushroom. Pull it nice and tight. You want to pull it so it's secure, but you want to make sure your tension is the same for each stitch so that each stitch looks even. So I'll show you one more time. Top to bottom through the stitch, the whole stitch on the top, and then back loop only on the bottom. And this is called a whip stitch. What we're doing differently though is going through the back loop on one side, but this just helps keep the pattern of the gills consistent on the bottom, and also I just think it looks cuter. So I am going to continue doing that all the way around, and I will meet back up with you on the other side. We are finished sewing the top on. This is what it looks like, and we're back around where we started. So what we're going to do for this is, you can see it looks a little bit funky. We are going to loop back through into that very first stitch. You're going to come in back to front. This time though, you're not going to come out the bottom. So you're just going to go through that top part. And this is because we've already worked into that bottom loop, so you don't need to work into it again. So once it's out the bottom, you're then going to go right back into that stitch up under the top of the mushroom. So you're going to go up under like this, and this is how we're going to weave in our ends. Make sure your needle's not popping out through the bottom anywhere, and we're going to come out over on the other side through a stitch. We're going to pull through, and you want to make sure that you pulled through tightly, make sure it's nice and secure and even, that it looks good. Then we're going to go ahead and weave back and forth a couple times. So to do this, where you came out, you're going to go down into the next stitch below it, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go across to the other side, come out in a stitch, check to make sure you didn't come out the bottom anywhere, and then pull through. And repeat that as many times as you need for it to feel secure to you. I usually do it 3 times, so that was number 2. And do one more for number 3. And then once you're done, just give her a tug, and then we can cut off the end of our yarn. And then if you pull, that little piece should go back in. If not, just grab your needle and poke it back through like that. And that is our finished mushroom. This is what it looks like. I have mine set up as an ornament. Alternatively, as you saw, you can add a key ring at the top. It's also good as a fun little fidget. You can do that. Got the little seed beads that feel nice. This is an all-around great Christmas gift market prep item. Cutie, love. All right. Thank you guys for crocheting with me. Thank you guys so much for watching and crocheting along with me. I hope this tutorial was very helpful for you guys and you were able to make your very own crochet mushroom keychain. If you want to show me what you created today and how you plan on using it, make sure to tag me on Instagram at Sunshine Collective Crochet, and I'm also on TikTok as well. I post here every single week on Mondays, tutorials, vlogs, haul, anything and everything crochet related, and I am learning how to knit right now, so expect some content related to that very soon. What else? Oh, if you liked this tutorial and you'd like to have a written pattern of it, I do have a PDF pattern available over on my Etsy. I believe it's like $2. I'll have the link down below, but if you like this video, be sure to like it, subscribe, comment, and turn the bell notification on so you're notified when I post next Monday. So every Monday I'll be here. Thanks guys, have a good week. Bye.